Welcome to the new specification briefing for the WJEC Level 2 Additional Mathematics qualification. Before we get started on the briefing, I'm going to cover some housekeeping points. The presenter is required to make a recording of this event. This is a control designed to ensure that WJEC is able to demonstrate compliance with regulatory conditions of recognition, specifically conditions relating to the confidentiality of assessment materials. The recording will be made available to the qualifications regulator if required, and will be published on the new qualification page on the WJEC website. Please note that delegates are not permitted to make an audio or video recording of any aspect of this event. We have collated any questions submitted ahead of this event, and we're going to address these questions later. Should you have any further questions during the event, please use the Ask a Question facility on your screen. For this event, please ask only questions related to the new Level 2 Additional Maths qualification. If you have any other questions that are unrelated to the qualification, please send them to WJEC after the event. A link to the pre-event materials will have been sent to the email address or addresses that were provided on registration. And a link to the PowerPoint presentation and recording will be sent to those same email addresses after the event. So if somebody registered you for this event, registered you on your behalf, please ask them to forward the slides to you when they receive them. And the recording of the event and the slides are going to be available so that any colleagues of yours that weren't able to attend today can watch it in their own time, or you can go back and watch the recording again if you'd like to for reference. So we're going to have a look at what we're going to do over the next hour or so. I'm Lorna Jones, and I'm the Subject Officer for Level 2 Additional Mathematics, and I'm the WJEC Subject Advisor for Mathematics. The agenda here is what I intend to cover. We did originally schedule 90 minutes for this session, but we didn't have many questions submitted before the event, so we may cover everything that we've got in under the 90 minutes. First, I'm going to give some updates about the new qualification support package, and then I'm going to give you a guide to the new qualification. I'll take you through some key points of the new qualification, looking at the structure of the qualification and looking at the content in the units where the content overlaps with the legacy qualification, and making comparisons between the two. After that, we'll go through some of the pre-submitted questions, and then there's some time to answer any questions or some of the questions that you raised today. This is a Teams town hall, which means that you can submit questions at any time using the questions facility. I will answer as many as I can in the time available later on in the session, but there's not the option to raise a hand and ask a question in the meeting for me to answer straight away, so I won't be doing that. After the questions, I'll show you where further support is available from me and the maths team. So first, I'm going to share WJEC's updates that apply to this qualification. Today is the event highlighted there on the screen, and this is one part of the Made for Wales support package that WJEC are offering. You should already have access to the new specification document on the new Level 2 Additional Mathematics homepage. This is a different page from the current qualification. You need to make sure when you're looking for the new qualification that you have the web page for the qualification for teaching from September 2026. There's a link to the new qualification homepage in a later slide, so you will have an easy access to the page after the event when you receive the link to the presentation. As well as the new specification document, a specification walkthrough is available for this qualification. The specification walkthrough is like a blended learning resource that takes you through some points on the new specification. Many of the points in the specification walkthrough will be covered today, but it's another good reference resource if you want to go back to part of the new specification in more detail. To access the specification walkthrough, you go to the new qualification homepage and navigate to training and select on demand. You fill your details in there and the details of the specification walkthrough will be sent to you via email. We've also got a parents or option evening flyer. This is a one-page overview of the qualification in student and parent-friendly language that summarises the structure and content of the qualification, and also the requirements for awarding and the themes of the units. This is a document that you could hand to parents and students at an options evening. Then, as you can see, we've got highlighted on the screen today's event, which is the new specification briefing. This event will be run again tomorrow as a Welsh medium event, and it's going to be covering exactly the same material. So you need to attend only one of the events, and the recording for that will also be available on the new qualification homepage. So after today's event, what we've got coming soon are the sample assessment materials. They're going to be released by the end of term before the Christmas break. They'll be available on the new qualification homepage, as will the guidance for teaching, which will be released by the end of January 2026. And then you can see that in February and March, there are 12 days of, we've got 12 days of face-to-face events across Wales. For each event, the schools in an area close for the day to allow teachers to attend full-day face-to-face preparing to teach events. On these days, and for this qualification, there will be a session on each of the units that goes into far more detail than today's briefing. You'll look at the subject content, snippets from some of the sample assessment materials and some of the guidance for teaching documents. Teachers who attend the face-to-face training will gain a clearer idea on the structure of the new qualification and the expectations of the assessments for each unit. Teachers who come to those training days can use what they've learned to feed back to their colleagues and also to inform their department's curriculum planning. So do make sure that you or a member of your department books onto the event for your area to prepare for delivering this qualification. Then, in the summer, we've got exam walkthroughs. These are a run-through of the sample assessment materials. You've probably seen these for other mathematics qualifications. They're a student-directed resource where students can look through the questions, see the mark schemes, and hear some commentary on the questions and answers. In addition to the support materials the support package that you can see on the slide here, there are also blended learning resources and knowledge organisations being developed for this new qualification. And on this slide, I've got the dates of the face-to-face full day preparing to teach those professional learning events in the different areas that I was in February and March that I was just talking about on the last slide. So one of these dates will be in your area and you'll go to that event to learn in more detail about the qualification. So having looked at those updates and the details of the support package and what's coming up in the support package, I'm now going to give you a guide to the new qualification. On this slide, there's a link to the new qualification homepage where you can find the specification, specimen assessment materials and other key documents and other information that's relevant to the new qualification. Some of those documents are already published, as you saw on the previous slide, and the rest of those materials will be on there as soon as they're published for your reference. One of the questions that we often receive from centres is about the overlap of the two qualifications. This table here summarises what's happening over the next few years as the legacy qualification has its last series and the new qualification becomes available to candidates. For the legacy qualification, the last summer presentation is in the summer next year, so that's summer 2026. There is a resit opportunity in the summer of 2027 for the legacy qualification, but it's really important to note that the exam in the summer of 2027 in June is for resit candidates only. That is, candidates who have previously been entered for the legacy qualification only will be allowed to take the legacy resit paper in June 2027. It's not available to candidates who haven't previously been entered. In January 2027, that's the first time that any part of the new qualification will be assessed, and Unit 1 is available for the first time then. In the summer series of 2027, all of the units for the new qualification are available. And from 2028, Units 1 and 2, the compulsory units for the new qualification, will be available for every January series, and all 6 units will be available in the summer series. So the scheduling of the exams, the available entries from 2028 will then continue for every year. It'll be the same as in 2028. And it's always going to be that only the compulsory units 1 and 2 will be available in January, and all of the 6 units will be available in the summer. All students starting level 2 additional mathematics in September 2026 need to be doing the new qualification, because the last presentation of the legacy qualification is in June 2026, with a resit opportunity in June 2027. So level 2 additional mathematics, it's a unitised qualification. What this means is that learners can sit an exam at the end of each unit. They don't have to sit all of the units together. They can cash in the units to be awarded the qualification when they've done all of the 3 that they need to meet the minimum requirements. To be awarded the qualification, those requirements are that candidates must have completed the 2 compulsory units. So that's Unit 1 Algebra and Unit 2 Calculus. And as well as those compulsory units, they need to have completed any one of the optional units 3 to 6. Some learners may not want to do the full qualification, or there may be learners who wish to study more than one of the optional units. And so there's unit certification for each successfully completed unit. The units can be sat and taught in any order. The January availability of units 1 and 2 may mean you choose to do those units first, but there's no requirement to do this. The units are all standalone. So knowledge of the compulsory units is not assumed for study of the optional units. And you saw on the table a couple of slides ago a summary of the availability that's set out on this slide. So I'll just go over that again because it's quite important. And that is that Unit 1's available for the first time in January 27, and Units 2 to 6 will be available in the summer of 2027. Unit 1 will also be available in the summer of 2027. It is all 6 then. From January 2028, Units 1 and 2 are going to be available every January exam series, and then every summer series after that. All of the units are available. And so the information I've repeated then is what was summarised on the slide a couple of slides ago. This qualification is not tiered. So all candidates sitting a particular unit in a given series will have the same paper. Pass, merit and distinction grades are available for individual units, and also those are the grades for the whole qualification. So if a student has unit certification for any units that do not make up part of the full qualification, those units are graded individually in the same way as the full qualification. This table shows how the qualification is structured with the weightings of the papers. You can see that all of the papers are 50 minutes duration and are all worth 40 marks. And the papers are equally weighted, each contributing to 1/3 of the final grade. Unit 1 is a compulsory unit, so candidates must take this unit to be awarded the level 2 additional maths qualification. And you can see in that bottom row there that calculators are not allowed for the Unit 1 algebra paper. Unit 2 calculus is also compulsory. So again, candidates must take this unit to be awarded the Level 2 additional maths qualification. Calculators are allowed for the Unit 2 calculus paper. Units 3 to 6 are optional units, and candidates must take one of these units as well as both of Units 1 and 2 to be awarded the Level 2 additional mathematics qualification. And calculators are allowed for all of the optional units. So that's a summary there of the structure and weighting of the qualification. The Level 2 additional mathematics qualification supports the 5 interdependent proficiencies that make up the curriculum for Wales's principles of progression for the mathematics and numeracy area. They are conceptual understanding, communication using symbols, fluency, logical reasoning, and strategic competence. As well as the content listed in the specification, there is an emphasis on ensuring that learners have opportunities for learning experiences identified on page 25 of the specification document. The guidance for teaching for each unit will elaborate on these. Learning experiences will not be assessed. Opportunities to develop cross-cutting themes, cross-curricular skills and integral skills are identified in Appendix A on pages 37 to 39 of the specification document. The guidance for teaching, which will be published in early 2026, has sections dedicated to how you can incorporate the learning experiences into your classes. So it's a really useful document to support your teaching and ensure your students' experience of the mathematics in this new qualification is broad and relevant. So we've looked at the qualifications structure and how the assessment is split over the units. And so now we're going to consider the specification document and the layout of the material in the specification. This is a screenshot of part of the specification that I'm going to use to demonstrate the layout of the content in the specification document. The section for each unit starts with the basic details of the unit and a brief outline of the unit's purpose. This is the section on this slide. This is the section at the start of the statistics unit. And so we're going to continue using the statistics unit to demonstrate the layout. Since statistics is unit 4, each topic in the statistics section is 4 point something. The topic of probability is topic 4.1, and probability has 2 subjects, namely 4.1.1 and 4.1.2. This numbering convention is the same for all of the units, so unit, topic, subtopic. The number of topics and subtopics depends on the unit. It's not the same for each unit in the qualification. If you look at the top of the table, you can see there that you've got the summary of the topic. In this case, the topic's probability, and that summary is followed by the subtopics on the left and the amplification of the subtopics on the right. The amplification gives more detail of the expectations of the topic. For some subtopics, the amplification gives examples of the types of questions that may be asked. Now, looking here on this on the 4.1.1 and 4.1.2, you'll see that both of the amplification entries in this section start with learners should be able to. On the next slide, I'm going to go over the different ways that the amplification might be worded and what those different ways mean. The wording of this part of the amplification is important because it sets out the expectations of how candidates are expected to demonstrate their skills and knowledge. This slide explains what the stems in the amplification mean. Now, the detail on this slide is taken directly from the syllabus. So the possible stems for the amplification are learners should be aware of. This is used when learners need a general understanding of a topic in order to access the unit. Learners will not be directly assessed on this content. Learners should know is used when learners are required to demonstrate factual knowledge. Learners should understand is used when learners are required to demonstrate greater depth of knowledge and understanding. And learners should be able to is used when learners need to apply their knowledge and understanding to a practical situation or demonstrate application of practical skills and techniques. The use of the word including means that the specified content must be taught and could be subject to assessment. There could be other ways of assessing the content as well. Including does not give an exhaustive list of how and what will be assessed. The use of the words for example and such as indicates that the specified content is for guidance only and alternative examples could be chosen. So it's quite important that that you and your learners understand what the expectations are, and those are set out there, and how they're used in the amplification are also set out there. And here I've just included this summary slide here for reference of how the structure of the qualification has changed from the legacy qualification to the new qualification. So we've already covered the details of the new qualification that are shown in the right-hand side column there, but they're just side by side there with the legacy qualification for your reference. So over the next few slides, I'm going to compare the content of the legacy and new qualifications where there's overlap. I won't be comparing the two specifications side by side in detail today, but there are some useful points that I want to make. So first, we're going to look at the compulsory units of the new qualification. Some of the content from the legacy of qualification appears in the compulsory units, so that's Unit 1 Algebra and Unit 2 Calculus of the new qualification. And so we're going to start looking at those from here. Simplification of algebraic expressions involving fractions and solutions of algebraic equations involving fractions are GCSE mathematics and numeracy content. So while they're no longer specified in the level 2 additional maths specification, knowledge and skills from GCSE mathematics and numeracy may be needed to answer questions in any part of the new level 2 additional mathematics qualification. The remainder theorem and the remainder and factor theorems are no longer included in the content, but candidates are still expected to be able to factorise quadratics and solve quadratic equations by factorising. And here we can see that there's some algebra content in the new qualification that was not in the legacy qualification. So in the legacy qualification, candidates were required to solve quadratic equations. But in 1.2.1 of the new specification, we see that candidates may be asked to solve quadratic equations or solve equations with higher powers that can be written in a quadratic form, such as the example shown here. So that's an equation. The example there is an equation with x to the power of 4, but it can be written in quadratic form. Subtopics 1.2.4, 1.2.5, and all of topic 1.3 are new algebra content, and they did not appear in the legacy qualification. So now looking at Unit 2 Calculus. While candidates will not be assessed on differentiation from first principles, the amplification in the new qualification that you can see on the right-hand side there for 2.1.1 states that candidates should be aware of differentiation from first principles. So they're no longer going to be assessed on it, but they should be aware of it. And while candidates will be assessed on locating stationary points and determining their nature, they will not be assessed on sketching curves in the calculus unit beyond any prior knowledge from GCSE Mathematics and Numeracy Double Award. So that's again a reminder that the Mathematics and Numeracy Double Award content is assumed for candidates studying this qualification. In addition to the 2 compulsory units, candidates must complete one of the optional units to be awarded the level 2 additional mathematics qualification. And so we're now going to look at the optional units. Unit 3 includes some content from the legacy qualification. So we're just going to look at the points in the table here. So we can see the intersection of a straight line with a curve. That's actually now assessed in Unit 1 algebra. Special values of the trigonometric functions are no longer assessed. And problems in 3 dimensions are not assessed in the new qualification. Problems will be in 2 dimensions only. And candidates will not be required to sketch graphs of transformations of trigonometric functions. They need to know the graphs of the basic functions of sine, cosine, and tangent, and could be asked to sketch them. So I'm just going to say that again to clarify it. We still do want candidates to be able to sketch the graphs of sine, cosine, and tangent, but we won't be asking for sketches of transformations of the functions. So we won't be asking for a sketch of, for example, sine 2 theta or 2 cos theta and so on. Just the basic functions of sine theta, cosine theta, and tangent theta. And again, looking at the simple trigonometric equations that candidates have to solve, those equations will be in sine theta, cos theta, and tan theta only. So once again, candidates won't need to solve an equation in sine 2 theta or cos a half theta. In order to solve those equations, knowledge of the symmetries and periodicity of the trigonometric graphs from subtopics 3.2.1 and knowledge of simple identities from subtopic 3.2.2, which is rewriting knowledge of those 2 subtopics, which we will see on the next slide, might be needed to rewrite an equation into a suitable form for candidates to solve. So we're going to look at those on the next slide. And so this slide outlines new geometry and trigonometry content, which is in optional unit 3. So in the legacy qualification, candidates needed to understand parallel and perpendicular lines and to be able to calculate the length of a line segment. In 3.1.1 of the new qualification, they will apply this knowledge to identifying two-dimensional geometrical shapes. So this is in addition to what was required in the legacy qualification. The understanding of the graphs of the trigonometric functions is no longer restricted to between 0 and 360 degrees. This means that when solving a simple trigonometric equations, candidates may need to use the symmetries and periodicity of the trigonometric graphs to ensure they have found the full set of solutions to a simple trigonometric equation in a specified interval. And the section on trigonometric identities is entirely new content. And I referred to these sections 3.2.1 and 3.2.2 in my last slide about solving equations, because candidates, and we're going to see how that's going to be used on the next slide. So the amplification for 3.2.3, which you can see on the right-hand side of this table, shows some examples of simple trigonometric equations that candidates may be asked to solve. The third and fourth equations require use of the new content on trigonometric identities in 3.2.2 to write these equations in terms of one variable, either sine theta, cos theta, or tan theta, but not multiples of theta in there. So candidates need to be able to rewrite those equations using those identities in order to be able to have the equation in a form that they can solve. Solving any of the four example equations that you see here may require use of the content of subtopic 3.2.1, and that's the symmetries and periodicity of the trigonometric graphs. And that will depend on the given interval for the solutions. Then if we look at the amplification for 3.2.4, we see that candidates will be required to solve problems in 2 dimensions only. Problems in 3 dimensions are no longer assessed. We see also that for the new qualification, candidates should be able to consider the ambiguous case of sine. So that's new for this qualification. So now just looking at some further details about the subject content. The content of units 4 to 6 is entirely new to the level 2 additional mathematics qualification, and it will be covered in detail in the face-to-face events in February and March. These new units offer an early opportunity for students to study areas of applied mathematics that build foundations for further study in maths and are relevant to other areas of study in the real world. So this qualification offers a really nice opportunity for students to get in early with those interesting areas of study. While there's no longer content specified under the heading of mensuration, any knowledge, skills and understanding on this topic within GCSE mathematics and numeracy could still be required in the level 2 additional mathematics assessment. So in fact, any relevant content of GCSE mathematics and numeracy may be required to assess the content of level 2 additional mathematics. So in what we've covered so far is a high-level overview which compares the content of the legacy and new qualifications where there's an overlap. All 6 units are going to be covered in detail in the face-to-face events in the spring term, where we'll see the relevance of the content to previous and further study, the relevance of the content to other subjects, and points of interest in the optional units. So having looked at the subject content, I now want to show you this information about the assessment objectives. This shows you how the assessment objectives are weighted in the new qualification. If you look at the overall weighting on the very bottom row of the table, we can see that the weightings of the 3 assessment objectives over the whole qualification are the same as those weightings in the legacy qualification. But in the new qualification, the weightings of the assessment objectives in the optional units are different from the weightings of the assessment objectives in the compulsory units. The compulsory units 1 and 2 are weighted more heavily towards AO1, which is the recall and use of knowledge of the prescribed content, whereas the optional units are weighted more heavily towards AO3, which is the interpretation and analysis of problems and the use of mathematical reasoning to solve them. The weighting of AO2, select and apply mathematical methods, is the same in all of the units. The full definitions of the assessment objectives are on page 26 of the specification document. And here we have a reminder of what I told you earlier about the availability of the resources. The SAMs, that's the sample assessment materials, are going to be released on the 18th of December this year, so just before the end of term. And what we're going to look at on the following slides is some examples from those sample assessment materials. These questions are from the Unit 1 Algebra specimen paper. The first question assesses the new topic of sequences and series, and the second question assesses solving simultaneous equations where one of them is a quadratic. And that second question could also have been used to assess content on the old specification, so that may look familiar to you. So I'm going to give you a moment to look at the questions. Now we've got two questions from the Unit 2 Calculus sample paper. There was no new calculus content, so the requirements of these two questions may be familiar to you from the legacy qualification. Again, I'm just going to give you a little bit of time to look at those questions. This is a question from the Unit 3 specimen paper. It assesses content that was in the legacy qualification, as well as some new content in Unit 3 from subtopic 3.1.1. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time to look at this question and see if you can identify where candidates would have to use the new content of properties of trigonometric shapes. So now I'd like to share this information about the use of formulae and of formula sheets. In the legacy qualification, knowledge of GCSE formulae was expected and no formulae were supplied. In the new qualification, units 1, 3, 4 and 5 each have a formula list which will appear on page 2 of the paper. Unit 6 has an algorithm list which appears on pages 2 and 3 of the paper. Unit 2 does not have a formula list. The formula and algorithm lists are in the specimen papers and also in the specification document on pages 27 to 32. The resit rules for the new qualification are different for pre-16 and post-16 candidates. For pre-16 candidates, candidates may resit an individual unit once only. The better UMS from the 2 attempts will be used. If any unit has been attempted twice and a candidate wishes to enter the unit for the 3rd time, the candidate will have to re-enter all units. This is called a fresh start. When retaking the qualification, a candidate may have up to 2 attempts at each unit. However, no results from units taken prior to the fresh start can be used. For post-16 candidates, there's no limit on the number of times a candidate can resit an individual unit. However, the better UMS from the 2 most recent attempts will be used. The fresh start rule does not apply to post-16 candidates. So UMS means uniform mark scale, and there's more details about the resits in the specification document. So now I want to move on to the pre-submitted questions, which were sent to us before the event took place. These questions have been sorted into three categories: the structure of the qualification, the content of the qualification, and other questions. If any questions submitted during this session are similar to a pre-submitted question, I hope that the answers here, given here, will cover them. So I won't repeat questions if we've already covered the answers. And similarly, if any of the questions submitted during the session are similar to each other, we'll just answer one of them. So these are questions related to the structure of the qualification. Question 1, can a candidate be awarded the qualification with any 3 units? So no, the candidate must cash in 3 units that include the compulsory units 1 and 2, and any one of units 3 to 6, which are the optional units. A candidate that has not met these requirements can receive unitary certification on each successfully completed unit. Question 2. If a student completes more than the 3 compulsory units, will they also have unit certification for the extra units? Well, before I answer that, I just want to identify that there's only 2 compulsory units, and they're units 1 and 2. And the candidate needs to submit those with one of the optional units. So the answer to if a candidate completes more than 3 units is yes, they will also have unitary certification. So if a student completes more than the 3 units that are required in the new level 2 additional maths qualification, they will be awarded the full qualification, provided that 2 of the units are units 1 and 2. And in addition to that, they will receive unit certification for the additional units that do not contribute towards the full qualification. Question 3, how are grades awarded using the results from the different units? Grades are awarded from UMS marks, and that is your uniform mark scale. The UMS marks for each of the 3 units are added to get a total for the qualification, and that total is used to identify the grade to be awarded to the candidate. The details of this are in section 5.2 of the specification. And question 4, for how long are the unit exam results valid? Unit results are valid for the duration of the specification, subject to the rules for making entries that we looked at earlier. These rules differ for pre-16 and post-16 candidates, and section 5.1 of the specification covers making entries in detail. So now we have questions that are related to the content of the qualification. Do the compulsory units need to be covered before the optional units? No. The qualification builds on the conceptual understanding learners have developed through their learning from ages 3 to 14 and by studying GCSE mathematics and numeracy. This is stated in section 1.3 of the specification. No knowledge of any level 2 additional mathematics unit is needed to be successful in any other unit. Question 2, how will contexts be used in the assessments? Most of the examination questions in Unit 1 Algebra and Unit 2 Calculus will be context-free, but context could still be used in these assessments where appropriate. The examination questions for optional units 3 to 6 will have some questions set in real world contexts that are relevant to the content of the unit. This difference is reflected in the weightings of the AOs that we saw in the table on a previous slide. Question 3, is there a vocabulary list for each unit? Learners are expected to understand and be able to use any subject-specific vocabulary that's used in the subject content, including the amplification. In addition to this, Appendix B of the specification is a glossary of terms for Unit 6, Discrete and Decision Mathematics. So that it's only Unit 6 that has a separate list in that Appendix B, a separate glossary of terms. Question 4. Do candidates need to learn any formulae for the assessments? So earlier in the presentation, I directed you to the formula lists for Units 1, 3, 4, 5, and to the algorithm list for Unit 6. Those lists are in the front of the assessment papers, but candidates should really be familiar with the contents of the formulae lists through their study of the units. Since the qualification builds on learners' conceptual understanding gained in their study of mathematics, including GCSE Maths and Numeracy, the dual award, candidates need to know the formulae they used in that qualification. So that could be, for example, the quadratic formula and any other formulae that they use in GCSE Mathematics and Numeracy. And we had one question in the other category, and that is, are you releasing more than one SAMS paper for each unit, as units 4, 5 and 6 are at the new level? The SAMS will be published on the 18th of December 2025. As with all subjects, only one set of SAMS will be published. As each set must be approved by the regulator, no more sets will be created. So for units 1 to 3, you could continue to use the question bank and select questions from the old specification that are suitable for the new specification. And for all units, the guidance for teaching, the blended learning resources and knowledge organisers are being developed to help you and your students to prepare for the assessments. And of course, there'll be further preparation in the face-to-face events in February. So I've covered all of the questions that were submitted before the event. So if you have any other questions that you'd like me to answer today, please put them in the Q&A box. And I'll do my best to answer them for you today. And if you are submitting further questions now, we did give priority to the pre-submitted questions. So I'm not going to guarantee that every question will be answered today. I haven't seen any come in just yet. And any questions that are asked today will be collated and answered in an FAQs document, which will be published and sent to everybody who registered to attend today. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time now for questions. Okay, I have got a colleague who's been monitoring the Q&A session, and so far no questions have come in about the new qualification. So I think I'm going to move on. And if any come in, I will see them and we can go back. So I'm just going to tell you about how you can access further support for the qualification. Earlier in the presentation, I did talk to you about the subject, the new qualification website and the resources that you'll find on there. But in addition to that, the contact details here, you can use the email address there, mathematics@wjec.co.uk, or the phone number there to make any inquiries and questions about the qualification. So they'll come through the maths team and they'll come to me and and our subject support officer, Lauren Butler, will make sure that you get the answers you need for those. So when you receive the slides, you'll see this slide here that you can have a look at, which just tells you that if you're interested in becoming an examiner for us, how to do it. The email address there for you to contact if you're interested in taking up some examining. And I've found, and I know colleagues have found, that being an examiner for a qualification actually provides excellent CPD. So if it is something that's on your radar, do think about giving it a go. And finally, we would be really grateful if you would use this QR code or follow the link. Either now, you can use it now, or when you get the slides, follow the link to our CPD feedback survey. We appreciate any feedback that you can give about any of the CPD we offer. And using this survey provides an opportunity for you to feedback on this event specifically, but also to tell us what CPD you would like in the future. We do read all feedback to help us identify the support that you need. And I haven't seen any more questions come in, so I'm going to leave this feedback slide up for a few minutes. And I'll keep the presentation open till 4:30 with this slide here. So if you see your feedback now, or for you to ask any questions, and then I'll close the session. So I'd like to thank you very, very much for attending this new specification briefing. If you think of any questions after the event that you wish you'd asked during the event, you've got the contact details on one of the slides as to how to get in touch with the maths team to ask those questions. Thank you again for attending the event.
Hello, Lorna. It's Ira. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I do apologize to people that have posted questions. Unfortunately, the only question I've been able to see is the one about the PowerPoint and the recording, which I posted a reply, and that is the link to the PowerPoint presentation and the recording will be sent to the email address that was used on registration is also, and the recording is also going to be available on the training tab on the qualification page on the WJEC website after the English medium, Welsh medium event has taken place. But a couple of people have actually just said that they've posted questions and they don't seem to have come through. And I can only apologise for that. So I don't know whether you're happy for me to read some out and then reply if I know the answer. Are you all right for me to do that, Lorna?
Absolutely. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, and I can see that I can see that issue there in the chat. So please go ahead.
Yes, and I do apologise to everybody that to all those people that have put their questions through and they haven't come through. So somebody has posted with regards to the new content, some is similar to C1 and C2 content from the old A level. Would you recommend using this? You can use them. You can use the legacy papers, the C1 and C2, to give you additional resources. What we always say, they're a good resource, but always check against the specification just to make sure that there isn't any content in those questions that is outside the level 2 specification. But even if it is, just to highlight that to students, really. That's it. So if there is content from the C1 and C2 in those questions that isn't in the level 2 additional maths, as long as you're aware of that and you highlight that to students. But yes, the C1 and C2 content, they are a good resource for additional questions if you wanted to use those. Somebody has posted, should we consider the new course a 2-year course, 10-11, or a 1-year course, what would be the recommended teaching time? We don't, the guided learning hours, the 60 to 90 guided learning hours, as stated in the specification. So each unit is a 20 to 30 guided learning hour unit. It's up to centres whether they want to teach it as a 2-year course or a 1-year course. Because it's got a lower number of guided learning hours than, say, a GCSE, hence the 60 to 90, it is first teaching from 2026 with first award in 2027. So it is designed to be able to be delivered in 1 year, but it is completely up to centres how they want to deliver it and how it fits into their timetable, their scheme of work, their cohort. So we don't recommend it as such. It's up to centres, but like I said, it is designed to be deliverable in a year, hence the teaching from 2026 with first assessment, with first award really in summer 2027. I hope that's answered that question. And then there's another question: is the intention for this qualification to be offered as an option subject rather than being delivered alongside the GCSE maths course in regular maths lesson? Again, that's completely up to centres how they view the qualification, how it fits in with their timetable, with their students. I think the unitised structure makes it, I suppose, deliverable alongside the maths course, and it totally depends on how you teach, you know, what candidates have covered. We don't recommend it as such. It's whether you deliver it alongside or whether you deliver it after. It's whatever fits in with your students, your timetable, your candidates. I think the whole unitised structure is designed to give centres flexibility in how they deliver the course, and I think that's been the biggest change, and I think that was the feedback that we had when we were developing the qualification, is to have a bit more flexibility to do that. So again, it's up to centres. So I feel like I haven't answered your question outright, but I hope that's been helpful. Okay, so let me another one. Right. Okay. So if I do apologise, Lorna. You've done all the hard work, okay, and then I feel like I'm jumping in and stealing the limelight for you, but it just seems easier for me to just carry on now. I think it's just the one chat that seems to be accessible to everybody. If a pupil completes unit 1 to 4, how is the optional unit decided versus the one that has a unit certification? Is the best outcome used? Yeah. So obviously, yeah. So if a candidate sits units 1 to 4, and then they cash in for the qualification. Units 1 and 2 obviously will count towards the qualification because they're compulsory, and then it will be the better score from 3 and 4 that will contribute to the qualification, and the one that's not used, and the candidate will get a unit certification for that. So I hope, let me just have a quick scan. Up. I think those were the questions that were asked. So let me just go back to, let me just have another quick look, and okay, nothing else has popped up, Lorna. So I think those were the only questions, and I hope I've answered them. Of course, as Lorna has pointed out, if you do have any further queries, then please do email them into mathematics@wjec.co.uk, and then we can respond to those, and Lorna can respond to those for you.